Hey, it's Dave Salvadore of Blueline Design. Thanks for coming back to my channel where we only have 2 more videos in the big Blood Bowl board build series. Today I'm going to share with you guys how I painted the whole thing, so let's get right into that. I'm going to start with the grass side of the field using a variety of greens, which will give it a more realistic look. Then using different shades of brown, I create some muddy patches on the field. I dry brush gray onto the skull so that it looks like a stone sculpture that's been merged in with the field. I then concentrate on bringing out some of the wood texture in the beams and the trapdoor, also painting some of the metal. Next, I mix up a green wash that I stipple all over the field and then blot at it with a paper towel to give it some texture. I paint a rust color onto all the metal pieces of the field, and I begin to contour the skull icon using different shades. I really wanted to add some heavy texture to this grass field, so I used a sea sponge to stipple on different shades of green and brown. Using different color shades, I bring back some of the grid lines that were lost in the stippling. To paint the end zones, I first masked off each side, painted on the colored base coat. I then made a stencil to create the checker pattern. This was pretty easy. I just stippled on some white paint, alternated the stencil, and then stippled on the next row using the white paint. And here all I did was mask off the checker pattern, paint the white line, and remove it. And after stippling on some greens and browns to weather down the end zone, it turned out pretty cool. I also used masking tape to paint the white lines. This really made it look like a football field. Moving on to painting the Aztec frame, I started by randomly painting some of the blocks a few different colors. Now this looks really bad, but after a wash goes on it, it really blends it all together. So I mix up a generic brown wash and use some of the black grungeon wash and grimy everything down. After the wash dries, I take a cream color and dry brush it all over the Aztec ruins to tie everything together. And here you can see a side-by-side of how that dry brushing really brings the highlights out of the washed piece. The next thing was to contour some of the bricks using a brown and black wash to get into all the cracks and weather it down. I also wanted to put a texture onto the floor of the dugouts, so I stippled on a brown base coat with some flocking and Mod Podge mixed into it. The flocking would add a nice texture to it that once I dry brushed it, it would feel like a dirty, muddy dugout. I finished the Aztec ruins by dry brushing a lighter cream color to bring out the highlights. Adding a reddish brown and green shade into the cracks really helped to tie everything together and make it look like the original reference image that was the inspiration for the Aztec build. Moving on to the dungeon side of the field, I wanted to create a variety of different tones in the tiles similar to my HeroQuest build. So I started off with painting some of the tiles different colors. I wanted the dungeon side of the field to have a completely different look to it, so I wanted the skull icon to be really dark. I also paint the logo and the doors a metallic color. I then mixed up a greenish black wash and dirtied down the whole dungeon. And using an old rag is a good way of mopping up the excess wash and creating a texture. After the wash dries, I'm able to dry brush different tones to give variations to the tiles. I then use different shades to rust down the metallic parts of the dungeon. After the shades dried, I experimented with different kinds of metallic colors to bring out different parts of the logo, and I continued to use the washes to really darken down and rust up the logo and the metallic parts of the dungeon. Then using a fine point brush, I used a bright silver color to add some weathering to the rusty logo. I used the same technique to paint the end zone as I did on the other side. I was having a problem with the tape peeling up the paint on this side of the field, so I created a styrene stencil to paint in the lines. Using a thinned out black and brown acrylic ink, I was able to darken down the grout lines again. So here's the final painted board. As you can see, it's very easy to assemble using the magnet system. I'm really happy with how the dungeon side turned out. It's a nice contrast of the dark dungeon look against the white cream Aztec ruins. When you want to play the grass side of the field, you simply flip it over, put it back together, and game on. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching that. There's only one video left in this series where I'm gonna share with you all the little details that I'm gonna add to the build to really bring it to life. Until next time, keep drawing, keep designing.